overflowing from her bright, magnificent plain on the rigid coil and sprawl of mortal space. Here too the gracious, great winged angel poured her splendor and her swiftness and her bliss, hoping to fill a fair new world with joy.
Very interesting, beautiful, beautiful section. So we see that this great angel, we'll talk about in a moment, is overflowing from her bright, magnificent plane on the rigid coil and sprawl of mortal space. All of this mortal space, not outside of mortal space, in mortal space.
Mhm.
And then he says, here too, the gracious, great winged angel. And I have two quotes from Alok and from Jumur.
Mhm.
Alok says, the gracious, great winged angel is the Godhead of life, one of the four principal powers that emerged from the one divine consciousness. So this is at the beginning of the creation of the world.
Mhm.
And when this angel descends upon the hard soil of earth,
Mhm.
here too he fills it with sweetness and joy,
Mhm.
for such is its spell upon all things. Jumor says, it is the very principle of life,
Mhm.
which is a projection and emanation of the divine force. Wings symbolize freedom of movement, joining various planes, and the coming down of the angel, bringing the divine principles with her. It's very, very beautiful, huh?
Yes.
Her splendor and her swiftness and her bliss,
Mhm.
hoping to fill a fair new world with joy.
Sorry.
Such beautiful lines.
As comes a goddess to a mortal's breast and fills his days with her celestial clasp,
Celestial, like a
celestial,
celestial, celestial.
okay, and fills his days with her celestial clasp. She stooped to make her home in transient shapes. In matter's womb, she cast the immortal's fire. In the unfeeling, vast, woke thought and hope, smote with her charm and beauty flesh and nerve, and forced delight on earth's insensible frame.
And the only change I would suggest is the next to the last line,
Uh-huh.
smote with her charm and beauty, flesh.
Flesh and nerve.
So it's almost a comma after beauty.
Beauty, understood.
Good. So let's look at that now. That's so beautiful. As comes a goddess to a mortal breast.
Mhm.
You know, that feeling is so beautiful that
Mm.
I had with mother, that when she entered you, everything sort of exploded, and she poured so much into you. Even in the mornings at 6:15, when she came out on the balcony, you knew the moment she looked at you. Could be 10,000 people there, but you knew the moment she looked at you. She stooped to make her home in transient shapes. That's us. We pass with time. We're only in place for a brief time. And then what happened? Well, in the unfeeling vast, thought and hope woke. So, because she has that power of creation in in the earthly field,
Mm-hmm.
she smote to smite to like with a blow, huh? She smote, but here with her charm and beauty, she both smote flesh and she smote nerve, and forced even delight on earth's insensible frame. And then these lines that I've quoted hundreds of times come next.
Alive and clad with trees and herbs and flowers, Earth's great brown body smiled towards the skies. Azure replied to azure in the sea's laugh. New sentient creatures filled the unseen depths. Life's glory and swiftness ran in the beauty of beasts. Man dared and thought and met with his soul the world.
Okay, some
Mhm,
changes here. Okay, so we see alive and clad, in other words, dressed with trees and herbs and
mhm,
flowers.
mhm.
Herbs, the H is not pronounced.
Oh, okay.
Herbs.
Herbs. Okay, okay.
And then in the next line, well, no, after Earth's great brown body
Uh-huh.
smiled towards the skies. And the preferred pronunciation is azure, not azure.
Azure. Okay. Azure.
Azure, yes,
Azure. Okay.
that's the preferred. Secondarily, it could be azure, but here it fits better in the pentameter
Mhm.
as Azure replied to Azure in the sea's lap.
Got you.
New,
Azure. Okay.
yes, new sentient creatures filled the unseen depths. Sentient, conscious, huh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Life's glory and swiftness ran in the beauty of peace. And then I would say a little differently, man dared and thought and met with his soul the world.
Okay.
It's a little more
Yes. Yes.
beautiful.
It changes the meaning. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. The soul world. Yes. Okay. Narad, so you want me to repeat that or you want me to continue?
I'll continue.
Okay. But while the magic breath was on its way, before her gifts could reach our present hearts, a dark, ambiguous presence questioned all.
Yes, this is the problem, and we'll find out what that is. We
Mhm,
have to remember that we are in the early stages of these books
mhm,
and the book of the Traveler of the Worlds.
mhm,
And this is the glory and fall of life. And up to now, we've only known the glory of life. We've only
mhm,
read about the glory of life.
mhm.
Now comes in the fall,
Oh, okay.
because he says, but while the magic breath was on its way, before her gifts could reach our prisoned hearts, a dark, ambiguous presence questioned all. And he capitalizes the word presence
Presence.
because it can be a supernatural spirit
Okay.
or influence.
Mhm. Okay.
And it is not a positive presence here, but it's capitalized, so it's a strong presence.
Mm.
And now we'll find out more about it.
The secret will that robes itself with night and offers to spirit the ordeal of the flesh, imposed a mystic mask of death and pain.
And the question that always arises in people's hearts
Mhm.
is, why does this have to happen?
Mm.
There's all this world of beauty, and we've seen the great goddess come down and bring all these gifts. But it's a secret will, capital W,
Mhm.
that robes, that dresses itself with night. This is the divine play, the Leela of the divine. And what does it do? Because it's a force of being and conscious action is this will. And then he says, and it offers, doesn't put on the ordeal of the flesh on the spirit, but offers to spirit the ordeal of the flesh. And this is something that we work on every week with Ranganathan, that when the involution begins and comes down to create matter and life, it's totally pure. There's no falsehood, there's no error in the involution. Error begins with the evolution.
Mm.
Okay, so that's interesting.
Mhm.
And so now we see that, well, if we look in the widest comprehension we can have,
Mhm.
it's as if the divine, creating these billions of beings, wants to explore this multitude in life.
Mm.
And with that exploration and that descent into matter comes the possibility, actually the probability, of error
Mm.
and falsehood and duality. So here we see that the spirit is offered the ordeal of the flesh, and even is imposed a mystic mask of death and pain. But it's only a mask.
Mm. Mm.
See, we have to understand the words. And
Yes.
not only is it a mask, but it's a mystic mask.
Mm.
So it's kind of hidden, mystical mask of death and pain.
Mhm.
Now he's going to tell us much more. This is such a beautiful passage.
Mm. Yes. Interned now in the slow and suffering years, sojourns the winged and wonderful wayfarer, and can no more recall her happier state, but must obey the inert inconscience law, insensible foundation of a world in which blind limits are on beauty laid, and sorrow and joy as struggling comrades live.
Comrades, comrades,
Comrades.
comrades.
Comrades. Okay.
Yeah, comrades.
Comrades. Okay.
But good reading, good reading.
Okay.
So now we're going to see what happens. Interned now, interned. If you're interned,
Mhm.
you are confined to certain limit, and
Mhm.
that limit is life,
Mm.
our life,
Mhm.
in slow and suffering years. And of course, we have all known those slow and suffering years.
Mhm.
Sojourns. When you sojourn, you only stay temporarily at a place. So it's not permanent. And again, it's so important to remember to understand and search out the meanings of the words Sri Aurobindo uses. Look at this line. Sojourns the winged and wonderful wayfarer. Look
Is
at
that
that.
the angel again that he's referring to?
The wonderful wayfarer, yes, who's come into birth. And look at the alliteration. WWW.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yes.
And can no more recall her happier state. And so when we come down into the body, the baby doesn't know anything but to move towards the mother's breast. Doesn't know anything about life.
Yes.
Doesn't have any feeling about life. It just goes to the mother. So this winged and wonderful wayfarer, we can just imagine ourselves coming down into birth as a winged and wonderful wayfarer, and can no more recall her happier state, but must obey the inert, inconscious law, because the moment we take birth, we are totally inconscient.
Okay.
As the baby. And what is that law? We'll see. It's an insensible, in other words, unconscious, unfeeling, unresponsive foundation of a world. And what about this world? In which blind limits are on beauty laid. Blind limits are laid on beauty. So they're blind limits. And sorrow and joy, duality, as struggling comrades, they live as struggling comrades. Oh, incredible.
Yes.
Okay, let's
Wow.
go on.
Wow. Didn't quite know this would be the meaning of so beautiful meaning came out of it. While reading, I was not even sure what it exactly meant. Thank you, Narad sir. Okay. A dim and dreadful muteness fell on her. Abolished was her subtle, mighty spirit, and slain her boon of child God happiness, and all her glory into littleness turned, and all her sweetness into a maimed desire.
So this is what's happening as we take birth. On the soul, this dim and dreadful muteness falls on her. And her subtle, mighty spirit is abolished. And even this boon, this gift of child God happiness is slain. And all her glory has been turned into littleness, and all her sweetness into a maimed desire, maimed, crippled, or disabled. And this is so interesting in this glory and fall of life, that so much beauty was there, and now this is, of course, it's only the Canto 3, so we have 15 cantos in this book of the Traveler of the Worlds. So now we're seeing first the joy, the glory of life, and now suddenly the fall of life, and all her sweetness into a maimed desire. And now we have to see what's going to happen, what she has to go through.
Sure.
This plane of existence.
To feed death with her works is here life's doom. Oh,
Yes.
that's period.
So, yes, there's a period, yes. So to feed death, because we all die, and we all were destined to die until Sri Aurobindo and Mother came bringing down the supermind.
Mhm.
It's no more absolutely going to happen.
Mhm.
It can change now as the supramental grows stronger and stronger.
Mhm.
So to feed death with her works, our works, whatever we accomplish in life,
Mhm.
is here life's doom. Interesting.
Mhm.
How many remember someone 80 years ago? Do we remember politicians 80 years ago? We have faint memories of Raman Maharshi,
Mhm.
of, of other great sages, but life's doom is
Mhm.
that we feed death with our works. And we'll continue to the end now.
Sure. So veiled was her immortality that she seemed inflicting consciousness on unconscious things, an episode in an eternal death, a myth of being that must forever cease.
This is very important. Her immortality, life's immortality, is veiled.
Mhm.
And it's veiled so strongly that she seemed, and now this is a parenthetical phrase, the next line. She seemed what? An episode in an eternal death. But she seemed inflicting consciousness on unconscious things. So this is what happens as we begin to grow in consciousness. We are inflicting consciousness on unconscious things.
Mhm.
And it seems like an episode in an eternal death. Not only that, but it seems like a myth of being that must forever cease. Now we have to remember these words. She seemed,
Mhm.
that first line.
Yes, yes, yes.
Her immortality is veiled,
Mhm.
and therefore she seemed an episode in an eternal death.
Right, right.
And she also seemed a myth of being
Mhm.
that must forever cease. And now the last line.
Yes. Such was the evil mystery of her change. End of Canto 3.
And we see that it is not an evil of her change, but it's an evil mystery of her change. The mystery of this plane of existence
Mhm.
in Canto 3, the glory and the fall of life. Oh, it's
Narad, so
an,
you want me to continue to Canto 4 or do you want me to read?
I think let's read and see where we get to because
Okay,
you have to read this so beautifully. Huh?
sure. So coming back to page 130, second line.
Right.
Overflowing from her bright, magnificent plain, on the rigid coil and sprawl of mortal space, here too the gracious, great winged angel poured her splendor and her swiftness and her bliss, hoping to fill a fair new world with joy. As comes a goddess to a mortal's breast and fills his days with her celestial clasp, she stooped to make her home in transient shapes. In matter's womb she cast the immortal's fire. In the unfeeling vast woke thought and hope, smote with her charm and beauty, flesh and nerve, and forced delight on earth's insensible frame, alive and clad with trees and herbs and flowers. Earth's great brown body smiled towards the skies. Azure replied to azure in the sea's laugh. New sentient creatures filled the unseen depths. Life's glory and swiftness ran in the beauty of beasts. Man dared and thought and met with his soul the world. But while the magic breath was on its way, before her gifts could reach our prisoned hearts, a dark, ambiguous presence questioned all. The secret will that robes itself with night and offers to spirit the ordeal of the flesh, imposed a mystic mask of death and pain. Interned now in the slow and suffering years, sojourns the winged and wonderful wayfarer, and can no more recall her happier state, but must obey the inert, inconscious law, insensible foundations of a world in which blind limits are on beauty laid, and sorrow and joy as struggling comrades live. A dim and dreadful muteness fell on her. Abolished was her subtle, mighty spirit, and slain her boon of child god happiness, and all her glory into littleness turned, and all her sweetness into a maimed desire. To feed death with her works is here life's doom. So veiled was her immortality that she seemed inflecting consciousness on unconscious things, an episode in an eternal death, a myth of being that must forever cease. Such was the evil mystery of her change. End of Canto 3.
I would use the word excellent reading, by the way, excellent. Eternal, eternal,
Eternal.
not eternal, not but eternal, eternal.
Eternal.
And you missed one word, and you couldn't hear me for some reason. You made it a plural instead of a singular,
Oh,
but that's okay. I don't know why you couldn't hear me. That was strange because I was speaking fairly loud.
oh.
Strange though. Anyway, it was uh,
Was it
uh,
sweetness?
no, it was. Let me find it here.
Sojourns, is it? Or I don't know.
No, it was a simple word,
Oh, okay.
and it was just was in the singular,
Mhm.
and you read it in the plural.
Oh, okay.
You
I'll look
comes.
at the recording, Narad sir.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, I don't know if you'll hear my voice or not.
I couldn't hear it. Maybe I was just focusing
Maybe
too much.
deep into it, but you read so beautifully.
Thank
One
you,
of
Narad sir. Now the meaning is coming out because I read it throughout the week, but the way you explained about childbirth and then the descent, or, I mean, going from uh, the happier state into the mortal body. all that didn't come to me at all while I was reading this line. So it
Well,
made a lot of sense.
I'm glad it's come to you because it's very special and they're beautiful lines. Remember that line with alliteration, the four W's.
Yes. Yep.
Good.
Thank you,
So
sir.
see you next week.
Sure.